3 mile per hour dads. Like just even the name hey, let's downshift. Let's downshift. And so many of us, as we add kids or as we add next chapter of career, it's like the faster is better, more is better.
Yeah.
Where is it true? I don't think I think there's a little bit of a mirage here that we're running towards. I'd love to hear your heart on 3 mile per hour dads and why pace, why a steadier is a gift to our kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So I named it the project that I run on the side, 3 mile per hour fatherhood, or 3 mile per hour dads. It was inspired by a book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, which I know you're a fan of, by a guy named John Mark Comer, who just a teacher, pastor, author out on the West Coast. That his teachings and books have been very influential in my life. And in this book, he's talking about living at 3 miles per hour. And he talks about how Jesus specifically walked at 3 miles per hour. It's kind of the average speed of somebody walking, right? They're moving forward, they're going somewhere, but they're not in a hurry. They're not speed walking, not trying to, pass the person in front of them on the sidewalk. They're not checking their watch constantly, trying to figure out if they're on time or not. It's just a slow pace of life. I call it like the pace of presence, and the reason that I have really latched on to that language, both in my life and in the work that I do, trying to encourage dads to slow down, is exactly what you said. I think culturally we're moving at this consistently faster pace where, like you said, more is better. To slow down or to stop or to pause or to rest feels wasteful, or it feels like we're missing out on something. That slow and less is bad, fast and more is good. And you see it in what I would call like the average family calendar or lifestyle, where you talk to these different people and they're constantly on the go, from could be practice to an extracurricular to birthday parties to you try to make plans with them and they're like, well, how's December look for you? They're planning their life 2-3 months out because it's just that full. And I'm like, if you're constantly hurrying from one thing to the next, it makes it almost impossible, in my opinion, to be present, like to pay attention to the things that really matter. And I know, at least for me, I won't speak for every dad, because there are some, super dads out there that maybe have this figured out. I'm not one of them. But I cannot be the type of dad I want to be when I'm in a hurry. Those are mutually exclusive things.
Yes.
You think about the moment where you're trying to get out the door to go somewhere and, your kid can't find their shoes, which is every time you're trying to get out the door as a dad, it seems. Real. And, if you're just like trying to go, it's, I'm speaking harshly. I'm being critical. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. And the reality is my 5-year-old just can't remember where she put her shoes. That's a totally normal thing for a 5-year-old. And yet I'm the one that's all worked up because I'm trying to go too fast. And so that's the heart behind it, is to really encourage dads to learn to love slowing down, to find the art of that pace of presence, and to learn what it means to really invest their time, their energy, their attention into the things that really matter, and not just live life by default based on what everybody else around you is doing.
Yes. I recently, I think we chatted about this on our call last week, but the learning from Jesus, I think it was Dallas Willard, but maybe it was Eugene Peterson, said that like one word describing Jesus is relaxed. One word. How would you describe Jesus? Relaxed.
Yeah.
And specifically what you just said, the load up, the getting my 4 little girls out of the house, getting their shoes, getting their water bottles, getting all like, can I carry, this is not a critical mission that has like this is just a simple dad leadership moment. Am I finding my heart snappy? Am I finding myself like energy, focus my eyes, how I'm looking at my girls? Am I disappointed with them in this moment? Am I? Yeah. It's, if I can't carry, in just loading the minivan, if I can't carry a relaxed presence, then what happens when, all these other things that life is going to throw?
Dude, exactly. Yes, exactly.
So I wanted to just pinpoint a phrase that you share with your coaching program and with your work you do with 3 mile per hour. It's 3 mile per hour fatherhood, right? Am I saying
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Great. So shrapnel.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
have not served our country in the military. I have read and have learned about the effects of a grenade and these small pieces of metal and how, well, I mean, life threatening, like, it'll kill people, but also like shrapnel can get embedded and become like long-term issues from shrapnel. We use a grenade metaphor with freedom and the importance of a dad seeking healing, forgiveness with his heavenly father, so we don't pass on a grenade that will cause
that's good. Yeah.
Cause an explosion, which will cause shrapnel. So we talk about this, but I love your heart for just, let's be aware as dads, when we have these blowups, we actually are bringing pain, shrapnel that hurts our kids. Could you share from your just your heart around the idea of a dad blowing up in shrapnel coming from kids?
So that phrase actually came from a dad that was in one of my coaching cohorts. We were doing our introductions, and he was just sharing his heart on like the struggles he had. The whole cohort was aimed around dads that were struggling to keep their cool, to be steady with their kids. And that's a struggle of mine. We'll get into that here in just a second. But he used that phrase. He's like, when dad blows up, the kids catch the shrapnel. And dude, it just like stopped me in my tracks when he said it. And the reality is, he's spot on, right? Like when, as a dad, another phrase that I use a lot is that dads need to be the thermostat, not the thermometer, right? Like dads need to set the tone, set the atmosphere, not react to it. And the reality is we're going to do that whether we're doing it intentionally or not, right? Like we are going to set the tone, set the atmosphere of our home. And so when we do that, when we get to a point where whether you're overwhelmed, you're angry, you're just kind of numbed out from a really long day or a really hard season, when you lash out or blow up at your kids, when you lose your cool and you're just like, I just need everybody to be quiet, go away, just find your shoes. It sets this tone. And it, like you said, that even if it's not a moment of extreme importance, even if the language itself isn't intense, if you're using that tone, if that's the energy that you're bringing, like it's just going to have an impact, right? Like your kids are going to feel the weight of that. They're going to be the ones hit with the shrapnel where like, gosh, they start walking on eggshells because dad came in the room and he's getting worked up again, or whatever the situation is. And like I said, that's long been a struggle for me. So while my wife would describe me as a very steady person, it's kind of the generational thing with Graham men is a short fuse. And this is one I'm trying to break, And so it's something that has been a challenge for me for years of learning, how can I learn to keep my cool so that my kids aren't paying the price for my lack of self-control, that my kids aren't paying the price for my inability to regulate myself and my emotions.
When did you make that decision? I'm curious if this is like before you had your first child. Is this 5 years ago when you had 2 or 3 little kids on the home front? When did you decide there's a different vision, different course? I'm not going to be this dad who passes on this, blowing up on my kids, short fuse. I'm going to be a different kind of dad. I'm curious where did you put the stake in the sand?
Yeah. So for me, it was, I want to say probably 4 or 5 years ago. At that point, we'd had 5 of our 6 kids, and we were going through an extremely challenging season with my oldest son, who is now 10. He was probably 6, maybe 7 at the time, somewhere in that time range. And it was, I won't go into all the details on that right this second, but it was just extremely exhausting. These long, drawn out battles with him daily. Every night is, we're up till 10 o'clock, just him refusing to go to bed. And there was a lot of different dynamics at play, but it was to the point where I realized I consistently responding to him in a very negative way. My tone was very harsh. My language was very harsh. I just could tell, I could feel it coming up in me as soon as the situation would get started. was you hear him starting to get angry. You hear him starting to throw a tantrum. You hear him coming up out of his bed. And I would just immediately be on edge. And I had this moment where I went to go sit next to him on the couch. And as I sat down next to him, he flinched. He kind of braced against, like, preparing for me to like kind of start my my lashing out at him, my yelling. And in that moment, I'll never forget it, because it just struck me to the core that in that moment, in this moment where my son is feeling out of control, he's looking for somebody to grab onto for safety, for comfort, that his initial response to his dad in that moment was to flinch, was to shy away from me, because I taught him that response, because I'd shown him through my actions that I was incapable of being the calm, steady presence for him in that moment. And that was like the turning point for me when I saw him respond to me that way, that I knew something had to shift. And I knew that if I wanted to have the relationship with my son that I've always dreamed of having, both in his childhood, his teen years, his adult years, to when he's having kids and imagining what that will be like one day, that I had to make a change. Like, I had to shift things, because the path that we were on was going to lead to destruction. It was going to lead to broken relationship. It was going to lead to me not knowing my son not trusting me, not feeling safe to come to me for things. And so, like I said, that was probably about 4 years ago where that shift started. And it's been, a process of learning, a lot of things with emotional regulation, of inviting other men into this with me to help hold me accountable, inviting my son into this with me to hold me accountable, and has been a really amazing journey. It's not perfect still by any means, but it's to the point now where my son and I are really able to connect in the hard moments. And
Tyler, many dads have a moment of they're disappointed with themselves. In this moment, I'm disappointed that this is what I did. I have intent that it would be different. But very few dads move to a vision that pulls them to learn and to grow and to seek friends to come around this. There's even like confession and being vulnerable with your wife, saying, I want to grow. I'm actually taking steps.
Yeah.
And even fewer than that, take the next step. A few years after this, maybe 2.5, 3 years, you start an initiative, 3 mile per hour fatherhood, to help other dads. And then here we are today, 4 years later. What were some of the inputs that right away that moved you from intent into actually follow through with action to become, not perfect. You've even said this, but to move you to keep this journey going. I'm just curious. You mentioned the book, Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. What were some other things? Was it mentors? Was it books? Was it ministries? Or was it just you're a determined guy and you're like, I'm not going to do that?
No, I'm really not, which is, the interesting part of this, kind of what I alluded to earlier in talking about me and my wife. I'm very much by default, I'm prone to inaction. I'm prone to pass. If left to myself, I'm going to find what's comfortable, the status quo, and I'm going to stay there. That's what feels good to me. And so that can also be a challenge when I do recognize that things need to change in my life. I can see that something needs to happen, but actually taking that first step into action can feel almost impossible sometimes, because it feels, I see the mountain in front of me. I'm like, how do I even start this? And so when I recognized in that moment that something needed to change, I think the biggest thing that motivated me towards action, you actually hit on it as you were in your response there, is having a vision that is clear and compelling enough that it draws you forward. Because the thought of missing out on that vision, the thought of sacrificing that vision for something lesser, is worse than the discomfort of taking the action. And so in those moments with my son where I was struggling to keep my cool, in moments where in the aftermath I'm feeling the heaping piles of shame for feeling like a terrible dad, that his kids are going to hate him because he just can't get it together, to feel the tension in my marriage where my wife, who is homeschooling our kids all day, navigating these challenges, can no longer trust me to step in and help after a long day of work because I'm going to blow up and she's just going to have to step in more with the kids and then with me. I'm putting, again, it's the shrapnel, right? Everybody else is catching the shrapnel. Recognizing that was going to make it impossible for me to be the type of dad that I've always dreamed of being. For me to have the type, when I imagine an exercise I do with guys that I work with is like writing out their eulogy from their kids' perspective, right? And it's not unique to me. A lot of guys use that one, but I think it's so powerful to think about, at the end of your days, you've lived a long, fulfilling life. You're 80, 85 years old. You've passed away and your kid is standing up in front of a room full of people talking about the impact that you had on their life. Like that to me is such a concrete, tangible way to find the vision that you have for your life as a dad. And to think about what eulogy my son would give if I didn't make a change, it broke my heart. And so that was like the motivator for me to change. Very thankful to have had like a very gracious wife that was able to help me see that and like talk through that without bitterness and being resentful. Having other men in my life that I could share this with, to say, hey, like I'm really struggling with this. I need y'all to be in this with me, to check in with me, to make sure that this is like a priority for me. And then there was some resources too that I read and listened to on the concept of emotional regulation, which to me is now, I'd advocate for it as one of like the most important skills any dad can have is emotional regulation, being able to regulate your emotions in the midst of the chaos that fatherhood brings sometimes. So those are the things that really like helped me to move from that moment on the couch where my son is flinching to now where, 9 times out of 10, I feel like I'm able to handle those situations in a healthy way, in a way that prioritizes connection over, just trying to get things back to normal.
Yeah. Tyler, I want to talk more about vision, but let's just take as an example in the short form, but let's fast forward 50 years and your son, the old trajectory that you were headed towards in that moment on the couch, if you hadn't changed. What are a few of the things he may have shared 50 years from now at your funeral? I mean, obviously at funeral, kids adapt and they say the best little slivers, even though it's not. But what are some things that were possible for him to say or think about Dad 50 years from now if you would have stayed on that?
Man, yeah, it's interesting. I had another guy in one of my cohorts who we were talking about the eulogy exercise, and he'd actually talked about a funeral that he'd recently been to. As one of his good friends, their dad had passed away, and his friend got up there and said, I'm going to share all of the good things about my dad with all of you. And he stood there in silence for 30 seconds, a minute, and then just got down and walked off. And to think about it, and my hope is that, I'm 50, even if I'd stayed on that path, that it wouldn't have been maybe that drastic. But I also don't know. I don't know if it would have gotten to a breaking point where I would have lost my relationship with him. I don't talk about this often or don't post about it on LinkedIn where I write most of my content, just out of respect for my dad. I've got a great relationship with my dad. He lives 10 minutes down the road. He's, heavily invested in my life and my kids, and a big source of encouragement for me in the work that I'm doing. And I love my dad, but we've not always had the best relationship. We actually went through a season when my first kid, my oldest, she was like 10 months old, and we had a bit of a falling out. And again, it was a lot of tension that had been building, a lot of kind of the short fuse, kind of frustration towards one another. It blew up, and my dad and I didn't talk to each other, see each other for 2.5 years. And by the grace of God and a lot of other things, we were able to reconcile. And like I said, our relationship is better now than it's ever been. But there was a time where I thought to myself in that 2.5 years that the next time that I'll see my dad will be when I'm giving his eulogy. And I don't know what I'll say.
Right.
And like, I think had I not changed and shifted, I think there's a possibility that could have happened with my son, that we eventually could have gotten to a point, because my son's got that element to him as well. He's, I see it. I see that, like, the generational piece, it's like was it Pete Scazzaro, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality? He said, you got Jesus in your heart, but grandpa in your bones, like the generational stuff. Like, I see it in him, where he's just prone to, to kind of that short fuse as well. And I'm like, man, if we're both just doing that through his teen years, through his early adult years, man, this could have blown up to the point where I don't know or see my son, and his eulogy is nothing, or he doesn't even come to the funeral, kind of thing, And I'm like, the thought of that being my reality is like, oh, it makes me sick to my stomach, Like, I just could not imagine what that would be like.
Wow. Let's flip the question, because that is like hits all of us.
Yeah.
Now, what are you dreaming into your vision today? What do you pray would be some of the things your children would say about Dad 50 years from now in that eulogy? What are some of those things? Yeah.
So a phrase that has been, I've come back to this phrase hundreds of times in the past maybe 3 years.
Yeah.
Since I read, you talked about Eugene Peterson earlier, his biography of Burning in My Bones.
Yes.
And I've never been able to go back and find it, but he talks about, it's almost like a throwaway line in the book somewhere, but he's talking about shepherding his flock, pastoring his church. And he talks about pastoring and walking with people through the full range of the human experience. That's the phrase that he uses, the full range of the human experience. And the reason I bring it up here is because I want my kids to know and to see that I'm a human. Like, I want them to know and see that I'm not going to be perfect. And so, like, we talk about that all the time in our house, like, that it is okay to make mistakes. It is okay to not be perfect, that mommy and daddy are humans and we're not going to be perfect. And when I think about what I would want my son to stand in front of a room and people and to say, to be able to acknowledge my humanity, to acknowledge I wasn't perfect, that I still had moments where I lost my cool, where I spoke too harshly and had to apologize, but that I always apologized, that I always came back, that I always fought to restore the relationship when I fell short, that I set that example. There's a guy named Cord Sachs. He's a founder and CEO of a couple companies down in Birmingham, Alabama. He's a dad of 6. I got to talk to him one time about fatherhood, and this guy's just an absolute stud. And I asked him similar question of, like, what would be your biggest piece of advice to dads? And he said that a dad's role is not to be Superman. A dad's role is to be the chief repenter in the house, that a dad's role is to show his kids that he needs Jesus just as much as they do. And to be able to think about my son standing in front of a room of people and saying that I did that, saying that, like, even when I fell short, that I came back, that I, like I said, that I apologized, that I continued to turn away from that sin, that I fought for my kids, that I was that steady presence, that even when I fell short, I just kept coming back and fighting for that, for them, modeling that for them. Man, like, I don't know. I can't think of many, like, better things to have been said about me for my kids, that I was present in those moments with them. And, I just kept coming back.
And Tyler, what I'm noticing is there's no list of accomplishments you hope your children would say about you. It's not the doing, the achieving. I mean, the core one is the chief repent, like, basic. And I've learned that when I go humbly to my girls and say, Dad, I missed it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that this, like, I apologize for what happened. One, I get closer to Jesus because of bringing that to light. So I get to be closer to my Heavenly Father. 2, I'm closer to my girls. Like there's a closeness that increases. I've modeled and deposited something in them of seeking Jesus, seeking repentance, a turning. And my wife loves me more when she sees a humble dad who goes, so, like, I get, like, win by humbly saying I missed it.
Yeah,
and
dude.
So I guess I want to click out a little bit, zoom out around vision. There's this exercise, which is so powerful that you're walking us through around a eulogy and imagining. Imaginative prayer, so powerful. Imagining forward with a journal and writing some of the things. What are some other aspects of a dad crystallizing just to a further degree their vision for their family, for their life, for their fatherhood? What are some other things you would coach us on?
So one of the other exercises that I have used before, that similar concept, but I think it from a different perspective, a different angle, is to imagine your 80th birthday party. So I really like this one. You talk about getting like really imaginative. This is the one where I'm like, man, if you can just close your eyes and actually picture this in your mind, it can be a really, really powerful thing. And so it's to think about your 80th birthday party and what do you want it to look like, right? Think about who is there. Think about where the party is being held at. Think about what food is there, the decorations. Think about the vibe, the atmosphere. How are people interacting with you? You can think about maybe your own grandparents' birthday parties or anniversaries that you've been to. Maybe they feel very just cold and distant. Everybody's there begrudgingly versus, when I imagine mine, I'm like, everybody's excited. Everybody's partying. There's music going. People are dancing. My grandkids, great grandkids are just like flocking to me. They want to be with me. I think about it being out here on our land. We have an old kind of decrepit barn on our property that was here when we bought it. I imagine that being completely renovated. And we've got 6 kids. I hope they have a ton of kids. And it's just like we packed the place out, And the reason I like that one so much and why I think it brings a different perspective is it can touch on a lot of different aspects of your life and of your vision and give you really concrete habits and rhythms that you can start establishing today that will bring that vision into reality, right? So for example, I want to have my 80th birthday party in this barn out back. Right now, it's not safe to have a party in. I know for even the financial stewardship, I need to be stewarding my finances in a way that are going to allow me to one day spend some money to renovate this barn into a place that can host a lot of people, right? And like, that's part of my vision now. That's part of what I want to bring into reality. And so I think about that when I steward my finances, when I decide what to spend, what to save, what to give, that factors in, that influences my habits and my rhythms today because that's part of my vision, right? That's not necessarily something that would come up in the eulogy exercise, but for my birthday party, it does. When I think about my kids having a lot of kids, there's a guy named Jeremy Pryor. I don't know if you've come across him, but Jeremy's the man. I love Jeremy, him and the family teams. And one of the things that he talks about so often in his content and his books and stuff is making it possible for your kids to have kids as early as possible, right? And so I think about what things can I do to give my kids the opportunity to have kids earlier in life so that at my 80th birthday party, I got grandkids and great grandkids and, that it's just, again, that it's packed out with like the legacy that my wife and I have created. And so that influences how I think about where we live, our land. How can we steward this? How can I build some tiny houses out in my backyard that my kids could live in when they get married to save money so that they can afford to have kids earlier? Like all these different things. I could go on and on about these different examples and these different things that, like, as I reverse engineer my 80th birthday party back to now, it's got me thinking about all kinds of things that I want to do with my life now, right? Like fitness, it's just like, do I want to be this like overweight old man that just like can't get up and dance? I'm like, no, I want to be an 80-year-old that's out there like boogieing with his great grandkids, and I'm like, okay, that means I need to take care of myself now in a different way. Just influence it. It can set the vision and influence every aspect of my life to think about what I want that birthday party to look like,
Yes.
So
Tyler, the amount my heart just is kind of like singing right now. Like I'm so full thinking about that vision, and I'm going to spend some significant time.
Yeah.
actually putting that to paper, some of that vision. So that's an exercise immediately.
Yeah.
And we always pray that we are dads. Action. We have a bias towards action. That doesn't mean it's just like add. But like, what's the step in today's conversation? That action might be 20 minutes with the journal, but we just we take the next step. I thought maybe we would end here because the vision for your 80th birthday, if there's a severing of relationship with a child because of we don't have this emotional regulation, or we've caused fear base, or we've taken short-term, some short-term, like we've gone after this pursuit or numbing or something destructive that we've gotten into as a dad. These things completely hijack our ability to head towards that 80th birthday vision. Like, there's the lesser things that we're tugged towards because we're tired as dads. There's the lesser things. I just wanted to invite you just one more round on emotional regulation, because that probably, if we're like just stirred and we're not anchored, we might be prone to taking a short-term a fix or short-term numbing that hijacks that long vision. So I just want to invite one more round on emotional regulation before you pray over us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll do my best to keep this brief, because I can nerd out about this stuff for a long time. But the best way to describe it, if you think about your emotional regulation on a spectrum from 1 to 10, we'll call 1 to 4 on that spectrum hypo-arousal. So this is where you're kind of numbed out, you're sad, I call it like the blue zone, right? You've had a long day, maybe a lot of meetings at work. You come home and you're just like, oh, I don't want to do anything. You want to sit on your couch. You want to kind of doom scroll on your phone, have a glass of bourbon, whatever the thing is, just to, again, kind of numb out in that range. We'll go to the other end of the spectrum. We'll call it 7 to 10. Well, that's the red zone. That's hyper arousal. So that's when you are overwhelmed, you're stressed, you're angry. This is the moment where it's kids for the 18th time can't find their shoes or their water bottle, or, everybody's shouting all at once. And you are just like, you can feel your skin crawl. Your chest is tight. You need everybody to be quiet. You just needed all that input, all the noise, whatever, stimulation is the word I'm looking for, to just stop. And so that's the hyper side. The middle, so 4 to 7, we call it the green zone, is where you're regulated. And that's where you're present. That's where you can respond in a calm, steady way. You can be connected to people then. And that's where we want to respond from as much as possible, is from that green zone. Because when your body is dysregulated, that's either in the blue or the red, either side, your greatest need is to get back to regulated. And you're going to do that via whatever means possible. So if you don't have strong emotional regulation skills, when you're in that blue zone, you're going to try to regulate through unhealthy methods. Again, could be your phone, could be binging Netflix, could be drinking alcohol. It could be some form of workaholism, right? Where you just, it's a lot easier for me to just stay in the office a little bit longer and work through things than it is for me to go home and deal with that, quote unquote, witching hour for the kids where they're tired and hungry and dinner's not ready. And so you avoid, right? Yeah. The other side, on the hyper side, the red zone, you're going to regulate more often than not through blowing up, through losing your cool, right? Everybody's screaming, yelling, stimulus is high, and you just lash out. Everybody just shut up and sit down, be quiet. And that's that moment where you're trying to bring everything down around you so you can regulate, because you don't have the healthier regulation skills to get back into that green zone. Things like being able to just take a couple deep breaths, going for a walk, doing a workout. There's a number of different things. And so that's the snapshot of emotional regulation in kind of the framework that I use. I talk about it a lot more, and I'm trying to work on like a self-paced course that dads can just have access to that goes through this in detail and kind of talks through how all this fits together, right? Because emotional regulation in and of itself is a great skill to have, but if it's not tied into the bigger vision, if it's not tied into the pace of life and understanding what's a good yes, what's a good no in this season of your life. And it's not tied towards what are the rhythms and habits that are going to help you live out a life of regulation and a life that's going to bring that vision to reality. To me, it's like the combination of all those things that really that you live at 3 miles per hour. Yes. Maybe is the best way to like sum that up. So yeah, that's what I got there.
So helpful, Tyler. So we're going to send in our show notes, we're going to send people your way to your website, to your LinkedIn, as far as all the content. And so grateful for you. I wanted to invite, and feel free if you had a couple more last words as well, but just to take a moment to pray over all the dads.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. Jesus, thank you for such a powerful conversation with Jeff this morning. I hope that the dads that get to hear this are encouraged. You know my heart, God, and that I don't want any dad to ever feel alone in the struggles and the challenges of fatherhood. So if there's any dad that's listening that has struggled with keeping their cool, struggled with feeling like they're just consistently overwhelmed by the demands of fatherhood, that they would hear this and know that there's nothing broken with them, that there's not something wrong there that makes them different than any other dad. I know it's so easy to think that every other dad has it figured out but you. And I hope that dad is encouraged by this conversation. I want to pray specifically for dads right now that didn't have this example growing up, men that grew up in homes either without a father present or a father who was physically present but very emotionally distant, dads that were prone to vices that pulled them away from their family, those men that are generational pioneers in trying to figure out what it means to leave a new legacy, to hand down blessing to their children instead of the grenade. Pray for them that they would feel enriched, encouraged, that they would draw near to you. That any dad that is listening to this, having recently fallen short, that's carrying any amount of shame from messing up or feeling like they just can't get it right, that there would just be an abundance of grace for them. They would find the freedom to draw near to you, Lord, to experience that grace and that freedom to continue walking this out, to continue to take that next step as a dad, to love their kids well, to know that perfection is not the goal, but to be consistently present, to be consistently steady, to just keep showing up, to repent, to turn away from any sin that's ensnaring us, and to continue on arm in arm with you, God, in this incredible calling and gift that is fatherhood. So thank you for the opportunity to get to talk about these things. Thanks for Jeff and his platform and his heart to bless dads tremendously. Thank you for being the ultimate picture of what a good father is. May we continue to just be inspired by you, God, and to walk this out daily with our own kids. We love you. Amen.